Okay, so welcome to our March webinar. I feel like we haven't seen you guys, but I guess we did just see you all in February. Didn't we do a face-to-face in February?
Yes, we had our big one.
So here is our icebreaker. So in the chat box, if you are guaranteed not to fail, what is something in your personal life you would try for the first time? If you were guaranteed not to fail at it, just put in the chat box something that you would do for the first time. And I can't see the chat box, Susan, so you want to read some?
No one, oh, Alfreda and says skydiving. I said skydiving. There's dancing, singing, learning how to swim, golfing, dancing, ropes course, flying a plane. I like that one, Becky. Surfing, getting skinny again. Seems real, Missy, for sure. Singing again.
I think mine would be singing. I'm a horrible singer, but if I was guaranteed not to fail, I'd totally do it.
So I have to call out, so Lynn put dancing. Lynn, I believe everyone can dance. We're all dancing to a different tune, but we can dance.
Yes.
Open a preschool.
Oh.
That's awesome.
Oh, I can't see the chat.
You just click on the little chat thing. Lynn Jackson says we have not seen her dance. I'm gonna call you out on that one, Lynn. It's a date.
I see it now.
So I think we got it.
Are you ready for the next one? Here's our next icebreaker. If you were guaranteed not to fail, what is something at your school you would try for students with disabilities? Ooh.
So I have to say, so Brene Brown, I'm reading one of her books for one of my leadership classes, and this quote jumped out at me, and it's about failing. It says, it's pretty simple. If we are brave enough, often enough, we will fall. Daring is not saying I'm willing to risk failure. Daring is saying I know I will eventually fail, and I am still all in. I love it.
I love these. A therapy llama, Missy. Taylor, only do student-led IEPs. Girl, we can train you on that and we can get your kids doing that. Teaching children how to believe in themselves. A garden.
Love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I wouldn't be good at a garden. Plants come to my house to die.
So I was asked this question once, and honestly, when it comes to our students with disabilities, I don't think there's anything Laura and I wouldn't try, as long as it was planned out and made sense. Right, Laura? I mean, I don't think there's anything we wouldn't try or be good. You know,
we'd come do anything. Taylor, I'll come train the rest of the department on student-led IEP meetings. Teaching children there are no mistakes. Hands-on transition. Field trips, post-COVID life. Truth.
If you were guaranteed not to fall, what is something at your school you would try for students with disabilities?
Well, these are great ideas. So really the point is be adventurous. We know with COVID-19 and everything else, we have learned how to live in a new...
I can see the link.
Miss Hathaway, you're not muted. We can hear you.
Yeah, can you mute yourself? Thank you. We know we're willing to try new things and we've done it. So let's keep that going, right? Y'all don't be afraid to do things and just give it a try. Call Susan or I will walk you through it and we'll come help you try it if you want, because you never know. Never say no. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about eligibility process and discussion. We have some odds and ends, a little bit about the high school credential supplemental materials, signature page in a virtual world. That sounds like it should be a TV show. Early childhood parental support, our high leverage practice highlight and upcoming web series. Yes, y'all, they are coming. I know it seems like they aren't, but they are. We will have our exit ticket and we will announce the winner of our February's drawing. If you remember at our February webinar, we said each month we would draw a name from those who watched the webinar or filled out that form, and you will be getting, we did order some mugs. So we're very excited about that.
Say it ain't so.
It is so. And then of course we'll have questions. And we actually we will have here in a few minutes, we have a guest speaker. We are so excited for this guest speaker. So let's talk a little bit basically about eligibility. Remember, there's 13 disability categories. In order to meet eligibility under IDA, the students must meet 2 prongs. It's not just one. The criteria for the potential disability, and there has to be an educational impact. No longer is eligibility that specific discrepancy number. We have moved away from the fact that it has to be, I don't remember, was it like 21, 22 points for grades 3 and up, or I don't remember what the discrepancy was anymore. But it is no longer just based on a number. So what does this mean? This means your MTSS RTI procedures in your school have to be going well and have to be implemented. A lot of students will qualify and show those patterns of strengths and weaknesses. However, there is no impact in the classroom. It is not just because we say, hey, they have a pattern of strengths and weaknesses, and we just, but really in the classroom, they're doing great and there's no concerns. There still has to be the educational impact. I think we're getting better at it, but sometimes we miss it and just say, well, they meet that eligibility criteria, but we forget about that second prong. Do not make a child eligible without the 2 prongs. A child is not eligible because a parent is challenging or the situation is challenging. Again, through our years, both Susan and I have seen situations where schools have, for the most part, just made the child eligible because, you know, we'll use my term, Susan, they didn't want to die on that hill with this parent.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, you're setting a precedence for those parents and for all the other parents in your building. So they have to meet those 2 eligible. Just because a parent is challenging or it's a challenging situation doesn't mean we give them whatever they want. Do not just rely on your psychologist. Review the SEED document and be sure you understand the eligibility criteria. Not that we don't have great psychologists working in our schools or contracted out with our schools, but you all as the coordinators and as the LEA reps need to know that eligibility criteria as well. And then when doing initial evaluations, look at the whole child, and that's also best for reeval. So we really shouldn't be doing just pure speech evaluations, or, well, that would really be the only other thing we would do. That would be separate.
Or one could be if a student has significant behavior, not considering academic achievement or how they're doing academically, because that always can be a cause of behavior.
Right. So look at that whole child. Don't just do one specific little piece, because chances are you're probably going to have to come back and do some more. So here are a few things to keep in mind. So we are anticipating beginning to see an increase, or you may already be seeing this, in a request for evaluations due to COVID-19. Remember, I had this conversation with, I don't remember who the other day, but if a parent formally requests an evaluation, and when I say formally, I mean puts it in writing, and the school has never completed one prior, ultimately the team has an obligation to evaluate, even if the school doesn't suspect a disability. And the reason for that is if the parent ever filed a complaint with OSIS would say, well, you've never evaluated the child, so how do you know they wouldn't meet eligibility and wouldn't qualify? So we would have an obligation to do that. Now, if we've already evaluated the student and the parent is asking again, and the team doesn't suspect, then we have much more ground to stand on to say, no, we're not going to evaluate because we did, and the child didn't qualify. Okay. Don't make decisions without data. So don't make any decisions with someone coming to the table and just saying, hey, you know, I just don't think they're going to qualify, or hey, I don't think they need that. Have that data there. Even if that means the team must gather more data. So if you don't have it, then go back and collect it. but make sure all your teachers coming to that table, if you're looking at an initial eligibility, that data is there at that meeting and ready to go. And then just as a reminder, eligibility must be determined within 60 days of the signed parent consent to evaluate. So the day you receive that consent from the parent to evaluate is when your timeline kicks in. So when you do that consent to evaluate, you need to leave it open and enriched until you get it back from the parent signed, because that date they sign it is the date your timeline kicks in. Now you'll have some parents that will go back and date it the date of the meeting, or you'll have, some parents who will sign it, who will date it the day they actually sign it. But whatever that date is they put on is the date that our 60-day timeline kicks in. And do not forget to upload those into Epicenter or into Enrich. Sorry, wrong program. So we do have, before we go on, we do have a question. Missy asked, is there a specific definition for doing well in the classroom? I know that definition is sometimes different for parents and the rest of the team. Susan, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I was just actually in the middle of typing when you said that, Laura, so thank you. But we're going to talk about this for everyone, because I think that is a very good question, Missy. We're going to talk about this towards the end of the webinar, because we're going to talk about progress monitoring and the importance of data, what that data looks like, because saying doing well is so subjective that we need to make it more tangible and measurable. So we're going to reference that later. And after we talk, Missy, towards the end, if there's still questions, we'll address them.
So I am going to show myself, and Valerie here, if you want to show yourself. I can't see if you are or not. There.
I'm showing myself too. Where's Valerie?
I'm here.
There she is. Yay! So everybody, this is our good friend, Miss Valerie Bell. Some of you know her. She is a psychologist and is contracted out with at least 2 of our schools right now. I think you're at Bridges and Polaris Tech.
Yes.
But Valerie and I go way back to Beaufort County. We work together. And then I know this is going to shock everybody, but Valerie is also in the PhD cohort that Susan and I are in. So Valerie and I used to ride to class together from Beaufort for 2.5 hours each way. So we're very excited. We asked her to kind of join us and talk a little bit about parent referrals and things like that. This is really her area of expertise. So we thought it'd be nice to have somebody else talk besides us. So I will do the slide. There you go, Val.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So you all may be seeing, I know we typically get parent referrals throughout the school year, but the number of referrals from parents may have increased due to COVID and the virtual instruction that students have been receiving. Most of the time, we're getting parent referrals due to academic concerns, but now the parents might be noticing more academic concerns. So, now before, maybe not currently, but when the whole COVID process started, the kiddos were at home with their parents, and the parents were either, helping them learn through the virtual instruction, helping support the virtual instruction. The instruction was different for the students, and the support that the parents were required to provide was also different. So that may also be leading to more parent concerns. If the parents are sitting with their students while they're attending instruction, they may notice the concerns that their students are having, and then also notice how their students are performing differently than the other students in class as well. And it's just increased responsibility for the parents. And, we've heard time and time again that the parents didn't go to school to be teachers. So they may be struggling to provide support to their students, and they don't know where else to turn to look for that support. Do you ladies want to add anything?
Nope.
Okay. So these actions can always be applied. Like, it's best to speak to the parent first and see what their actual concerns are. Even though they're requesting they may be requesting a special education evaluation, but they might not be exactly sure what that means or what they're requesting. They just might want help and don't know how to ask for it appropriately. So talking to the parents, seeing what their specific concerns are, kind of explaining the different processes and avenues to them might help clarify what it is that they want. Also speaking to the child's teacher, this could include the teachers from the previous year too, seeing how they were achieving prior to receiving virtual instruction, how they're achieving now, if the students have ever been in intervention, if they're receiving intervention now, what instruction was like when they were receiving it virtually, what the home environment was. And then after getting as much information as possible, meeting to discuss with the parents a need for evaluation. Anything you ladies want to add? Any questions?
I think you brought up a fabulous point that I think all of us who've been in this world for a long time take advantage of, and that's understanding how to navigate the system and the language. And when you said that sometimes they may be asking for an evaluation, but they don't know what else to ask for, what other route to go, or even what a suspected disability is. Maybe they just want some help. And I think when you said that, I was like, that's an avenue that I'm assuming parents are coming in as very knowledgeable, better advocates. But I think you're also right. There's that group of parents that just know something needs to happen and they just don't know what.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So they ask for, a special education evaluation, but they don't know that interventions are available or, what other resources the school has to try to help their child.
And there's also the whole section 504 element that is under discussed too. So that's a great point. Just the speaking to the parent, just figuring out what they really think that route's going to get them and what they're really asking for. I like that.
Do you all have any questions? If you want to put in the chat anything for Valerie specifically, we've got, a real life psychologist here on the call today. Val, have you seen
in person?
In person, have you seen an increase in requests for evaluations because of COVID in any? I mean, I know you were specifically in 2 schools, but even in the previous district before you were here with us during COVID, weren't you?
I was not, but I think last year, like everything was so new. And everybody was just trying to figure it out. I don't think that was what parents were focused on at that time, so I think you would be seeing a lot more of it now. Unfortunately, I don't have numbers to confirm what I'm seeing, but I think that parents, some of them really have struggled to support their students during virtual instruction, or now that kiddos are leaving virtual instruction and coming back to in-person instruction. It's just so different and changing so much for the kids that there's more need. The parents are seeing more need just because things are different and in constant motion.
Yeah, I agree. Do y'all have any questions for Val? Taylor says she's very good.
Thanks, Taylor.
Listen, Valerie may seem like she's meek and quiet, but man, that girl, she's in a meeting where it's rough. That girl, she stands her own. Let me tell you, I've seen it.
Thanks, Laura.
I've seen it happen.
Another thing to also consider when parents don't know what they don't know is even understanding what school looks like now, and how children are performing, what expectations are. And if they've been more live and up close and personal, they may think my kid's really far behind, but in reality, the child may or may not be. And so that's another thing, but they don't know until they've seen it. And we all know in the education world, but I think you made some very, very good points, Val.
Thank you. And, parents, like you were saying, may think that their students are really struggling, but the majority of the students may be really struggling due to COVID and the instruction they've received. So, right, they don't have that perspective as well.
Are you all starting to see an increase of parents requesting evaluations?
Yes. Response is yes.
Yes.
What's interesting for us, since we're virtual all the time anyway, though, is we've had more parents asking for evaluations because their kid doesn't want to come to school, period.
Yeah.
they're asking for evaluations because, you know, they just don't want to come. They're just too anxious and blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you know, they could have an IEP or a 504, but they still got to come to school. You know? And usually that actually shuts them right down because they think if they have an IEP, that means they can only come to school 1 day a week or something. So, yeah.
And Taylor, you make a good point. Parents taking, you know, they're taking their children to their doctors and pediatricians and things like that. You know, you are getting those little prescription notes saying, hey, you know, Johnny needs an IEP or a 504 or everything. Remember, just because you get a doctor's note doesn't mean that they get it, right? There's still those processes and those eligibility guidelines.
I got the first one of those this year for the first time in, I don't know, 10 years maybe. But it was from a private psychologist who said, you have to give this child an IEP. So,
yeah. And what I love is these are doctors and psychologists who have never seen this child in a school environment. They don't come and observe. They don't come see what this child is actually like. They don't even reach out to you to find out what's happening with the child. They just say, oh, they need it because, you know, mom and dad say they need it. And
well, and I think when you get something from like a private evaluation or from a doctor that they've asked for behavior rating scales or asked for input, that I always think you approach a little differently when there is school input, like Laura said, versus if it's isolated and static outside of school. And I think what you have to do is, one, you have to take that information into consideration. It's a piece of the puzzle, but you also have to say, I mean, there are people with disabilities all over, but when you look at educational impact, that education has to be considered and that data has to be there.
Yeah, and Nancy, you made kind of the same point as Michelle, that it is about anxiety, right? Everybody has anxiety. Heck, I probably could use an IEP right now or a 504.
But you know, we keep on referring to also back, not to take away parent right to ask for an evaluation, because that is always there regardless. However, what we're dealing with and what students and families are dealing with in this time, there's a lot of general ed initiatives to support all kids. It doesn't automatically assume because it's there, it's due to a disability. It could be due to conditions that are happening, but you know, so there's a lot of support I think that schools are contemplating. We're going to talk about that later too.
Okay, so we're going to move on. So Taylor and Michelle, this would be a great topic of conversation when you guys get these little groups together that you're supposed to get together to talk about and kind of talk about the struggles that all this that everyone's having and how they're handling it. So that was just a, you know, a plug there. Just saying. Okay, I'll just keep my video on. Okay, so let's talk about some odds and ends. Usually we do this at the end. We're going to mix it up here today and do it in the middle. Please, 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 when you are doing your Enrich Assistant tickets, please be clear in your requests. We still have some requests that are very unclear. Thank you, Val. We appreciate you joining us, and you're welcome to stay for the rest of this if you want. So we have to know exactly what you're requesting. Sometimes we cannot figure out what you're asking. Also keep in mind when something is finalized, it can't be unfinalized. So tickets or emails that say, hey, can you unfinalize this document? The answer is no. We can't unfinalize something when something is already finalized. Please remember to upload any documents into Enrich which have signatures. That means the parent response to notice of meeting, the signature page, release of information, etc. And make sure to clearly label those documents, right? As we go through audits, we've gone through audits that indicator 13. We know that there have been some items we've had to request because they weren't uploaded. Which, by the way, as an update, huh?
Can I say one more thing about that?
Of course.
Also, when schools were shut down last spring, or at the beginning of the year, I think the majority of our schools are back in person in some capacity. We're hearing murmurings that there's missing not that things didn't happen, but if you were at home writing attended virtually or whatever it is on the signature page, those pages or those notice of meetings are not getting back into the permanent file at the school. We have to merge all of those and load the documents up. COVID is not going to be an excuse for not having these signed documents or something written on those pages. That's all I got.
That's all she got. So another odds and ends. Oh, so to go back to those signatures, just to give you an update, I didn't put this in there, but we have been cleared over indicator 13 audit in all our corrections. Woohoo! So we are done with that, and that one's closed for the year. So we won't have it again for 3 years. All things considering, I think we did really well. And thanks to those schools who turned those corrections around really quickly. They were thoroughly impressed. I believe we had everything turned around in a month. So we had all the corrections and everything back submitted to the State Department within 30 days, which I think is a record. So we're pretty excited about that. Another odds and ends is to remember when you're finalizing documents, we're getting this a lot too. If you're getting an error message that says image error or image source cannot read from image source, you need to open everything in Firefox. Sometimes you have to go through multiple documents to figure out where that image is, but that program will show you, it'll like highlight, usually it's a little text box and you can hit delete. So that's 99.9% of the time what the issue is. So when you have that, go into Firefox, open Enrich, open the IEP, open those documents, and you can typically see what that error is. The SC Alt window for testing is open. Woohoo! Oh, sorry. If you have questions, call Susan. Please plan and begin scheduling for your reevals and annuals. We are quickly approaching the end of the school year, and our best practice is to schedule and hold those before the end of the school year. Anything reevals due before November 1st and annuals due on or before October 1st. You do not want to have to be doing annuals and reevals at the beginning of the year while also trying to handle school students transferring in. It becomes overwhelming and dates tend to get missed. Put this down in your calendar. We're giving you as much notice as we can. Enrich will be down Friday, April 23rd from noon till 5. We apologize if you have meetings scheduled then, but you will not be able to access Enrich at all during that time. So that's almost a month, a little less than a month's notice here. So any meetings you have scheduled on Friday the 23rd from noon till the end of your school day, unfortunately, you're going to have to reschedule because you will not be able to access Enrich. And a meeting should not occur if Enrich is not available. We're giving you enough time to let you know that those meetings may have to be rescheduled. So an SCD memo went out to districts and building leaders on the Office of Student Intervention Services. They are hosting a series of trainings designed to provide strategies and resources to expand emergency operations and enhance safety and social emotional support. So that went out. Check it out if you want to join any of them. As you know, we introduced her at the beginning of the year. Wendy Werder's our social emotional learning coach in the district. She has just done a ton of training with schools and with school leaders. If you are interested in any of that, reach out to her. I unfortunately haven't been able to join any of them, but from what I understand, they are pretty phenomenal. So you may want to jump on those if you can. I know this is crazy to be thinking about, but we need you to start thinking about ESY. Again, as we're starting to near the end of the year, we need to know the who, the what, the where, and the how. So start thinking about those ESY kiddos. If you have potential students, please be sure this year to talk with Susan or I about them. Not every student will qualify for ESY because of COVID. So we don't want to see a huge, we are anticipating an increase in ESY, don't get me wrong. But I don't think, Susan, correct me if you think differently, that we should see a huge impact, a huge surge all of a sudden for ESY. You guys probably already know this, but the testing waiver was denied. So we do have to administer our, what are we doing? SC, is it pass? Oh, I don't even know what it's called anymore.
SC ready and SC pass.
Yeah, we are administering those tests. We have not been granted a waiver. The only thing South Carolina was granted is for that 95 participation rule. So 95% of the kids do not have to participate. So if they don't show up for testing on testing day, there's no penalty to the schools. But anybody who's in school has to be administered the test. That includes your SEL kids.
I think on that, they're really referring to those virtual kids that parents are still highly concerned.
Yeah.
It's been challenging because we've done access for ELLs. There's been the gifted and talented testing and all that already, and we've dealt with those things. So I think there's going to be makeup days for testing for kids that are in person. However, if a parent refuses, to bring their virtual kiddo in, there's not a whole lot we can do.
Yeah. This next one is just a reminder, thanks to Miss Miller and I, we were having this conversation just this morning. So remember, you need to update that initial evaluation link. We are keeping track of initial evaluations to ensure that schools are not missing their 60-day timelines. That has been a big issue on our LEA determination. So there's the link for that form. You need to make sure you're going in and putting any students in there that have been initially evaluated or in the process of. Little FYI, next week, Susan and I are taking some much needed time off. Looks like we're actually going to be off some of the same days together. So we apologize, but I think a lot of you are on spring break, so it's okay. But next week I'll be off Monday, Tuesday in the morning. I'll be working Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday and Thursday. And then Susan is off Friday, Monday and Tuesday. For those of you that are keeping track, I am actually defending my dissertation Tuesday morning. So I am in the home stretch of this. So that is why I will not be in on Tuesday morning.
Why are you working Tuesday afternoon?
Because I have nothing else to do. Like, I might as well just work because Alan will be at work. So I'm just going to work that afternoon. And then I'm going to take Wednesday and Thursday out. We're going out Tuesday night to celebrate, hopefully, good things. The funny thing is, I'm defending April 6th, which is Tuesday, which happens to be my husband's 49th birthday too. So hopefully we'll have double celebration Tuesday night. And Susan is going to be there as my security blanket to watch me do this defense. So if I mess up, she'll be texting me along the way. So hopefully next time we meet next month, we'll have Dr. Simmons here, but we'll see how that goes. Susan, you want to talk about this piece?
Sure. So the high school, we shared information a few months ago when the State Department rolled out that they were phasing out the supplemental materials for the high school credential. So they are phasing those out. We've shared that information out with you. We've received another memo from the State Department, that they are also phasing out and restricting some of the alternative curriculums for our alternative assessment kits. So none of this is new. We knew this is all there. This is more of a reminder. So if you need to order supplemental materials that is still being offered for next year for the high school credential, the list of materials is on that link. Also attainment kits, if you have them those are for alternative assessment students only. You need to reach out to me for either one of those. I'm the point person. Everything must be ordered by August 1st. No late orders are accepted by the State Department anymore. So this is the last year next year. And if you need anything, contact me.
Yeah, it says contact Laura or Susan, but really just call Susan. So let's talk a little bit about signature pages in a virtual world. This is where I think this should be a story or a t-shirt, right? It sounds like, I don't know, Waldo's World or something. But we've come across some things, and actually thank you to Jocelyn in terms of your Medicaid audit. She's helped us find some of these things that we really just wanted to bring to light for everybody. So when you are doing signatures with virtual meetings, please remember on that top line of that signature page where it talks about the parent procedural safeguards, there is nothing that needs to be written other than parent attended virtually or parent attended via phone. Do not put things like copy sent home to sign, parent received copy. The only things we should see are parent attended virtually or parent attended via phone. You do not ever send home a signature page to be signed if the parent attended virtually or via phone, because they're at the meeting. We don't send home a signature page to be signed for that. So what we're finding is sometimes, and you are just being good stewards and very self-conscious, but sometimes we're documenting more than we need to. So that's where I was saying, for example, we've seen some, we're on that line, folks are putting copy of signature page sent home to be signed. Don't do that, okay? The best practice that Susan and I highly recommend is that you do utilize that electronic signature page in Enrich. Again, thanks to my talk with Alfreda this morning, I will make sure I go through as the state has updated Enrich, I will make sure that every role has access to all of those electronic signatures. Susan, that was something I discovered I may not have gone back and changed the roles. So I will get that done by the end of this week. So everybody should have access to anything that has an electronic signature in Enrich, and including the
Laura.
504 cards. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't type in a question. I have a question about consents to evaluate and initial consent for provision of services. Do those have to be signed by the parent if we're attending virtually? And can we
Yes, we
send those
can,
home to be signed?
So anything, so in a consent to evaluate or a consent for initial provision of services must have an original signature. So you don't need to write on that sent home. You just need to send it home and get the parent signature. Those have to be done, have to have that original parent signature.
Okay, thank you.
But for the IEP meeting itself, they don't. That's where you would just put.
And the reason being is the signature page isn't consent for anything, it's acknowledging participation.
Anything that actually requires parent permission, we need for lack of better words, a real live signature.
We need the consent.
We need the consent. So we need their written John Hancock, so to speak. If you utilize an electronic signature, which I think you've all become very proficient at, it's very easy to use. Please do not put in the prior written notice that the team members allowed you to sign for them. You don't need to put that in the prior written notice. You're just going to sign it. It's understood that you're typing in their name. The signatures are all going to look the same with the electronic signature. We get it, but you don't have to actually put those words in the PWN. Whoa, somebody sounds like a robot.
It's Carla. It says Carla's iPhone. I think the sound is not coming through.
Yeah.
So the other thing with that is on the procedural safeguards section, we do need to have something in there because OSIS does look at it. So if you had already sent it home in the notice of meeting, there is a spot where you check that in the notice of meeting. That's your documentation. Okay, if you emailed it to them, so if you can on those annuals, email it to them with the notice of meeting so it's all documented. That's the cleanest way to do it.
Right.
Okay, we're going to next one.
Let's go. Go ahead, Susan.
So this is a nice little tidbit of information. The early childhood, there's some information came from OSIS that Family Connections offers a text to read initiative. Some of you may know about this. Laura and I did not know about this, and it's actually super cool. So basically parents can text that book, that number 734-5 books 52, and they will receive free weekly updates through via text messages on Fridays, offering practical tips and activities for our younger kids. It goes all the way up to 5 years old. All the tips and best practices are aligned with standards and parent-friendly language. And if parents have concerns about development of kids, then Family Connections will connect with them and offer support. So you might want to share this with your younger parents, your younger kids' parents, because it's just a great tool for them.
Yeah, we thought it was pretty cool, but you guys, again, like Susan said, may have already known about it. Let's go to our high leverage practice in SPED, Susan.
Let's do that, Laura. Okay, so I'm sorry. I feel like I'm a recording record this year of I'm late to the party every time. What's that TV show? I'm tardy for the party. That's me. So it is totally my fault that these web series are not completed, loaded up, and recorded by Laura. It is coming. We need about a couple more weeks and we'll be totally caught up to April's, the goals and services, okay? But we're gonna truck forward, give you like a little overview of the special consideration of special factors and present levels. You guys can flog me later, but it's coming. We need about 2 weeks, okay?
Susan is holding these things hostage and I
I am. I'm so
don't know
type
why.
A. It's like, it's awful. It's awful. Okay, you can keep on going. And Taylor goes as long as they're ready by August of 2021. They will be, Taylor.
Don't worry.
They will. We got to get them done before summer because we have too much on our plate for summer. So basically the highlights of this consideration for special factors, this is not going to be a big long one, but it's going to talk about why the information is at the beginning versus somewhere else. That's strategic. How teams actually go through each of those bulleted points, talking about the behavior need, limited English proficiency, blind or visually impaired, communication needs, and assistive technology devices or services. I feel like a lot of times teams skim through this section, but this is the foundation for everything that's going to be talked about. If you don't have someone list something, if you have behavior checked, in there, you better have present levels addressing behavior at a minimum, if not accommodations, goals, and or services. So there's an alignment and this starts it and it's very critical. That's pretty much in a nutshell what that whole session is going to be about. So the second one that we'll roll out is present levels. Present levels is, I feel like it's the blueprint for everything. And we're going to talk about why this section is the most important of the whole IEP. We're going to focus on the difference and the similarities between academic and functional performance because they are different, but they can cross over sometimes. Skills to consider to get a gauge of the whole child because we hear a lot, but academically they're fine. Well, but academics plays into the educational impact, which plays into the whole child, which could also be more functional skills. Like Laura, her bread and butter and her baby on her dissertation is self-determination. We need to be very cognizant of what that is, how we reference it in IEPs and what that looks like. Transition alignment, social skills are just 3 examples of looking at the whole child, that's not just reading, writing, math, and behavior. So it's very important. We also need to look at data. What data do we include? What data don't we include? And where we include it in. Is it in that narrative or is it more in the data findings? The state is very clear of where things should be going. We also will talk about writing clear and concise impacts of students' disability statements. They're kind of, my whole career, my experience has been they've been all over the place. There's certain elements that must be in there and general broad terms that like the student's learning disabilities impacts their ability to read. That is too generic. It's too big picture. It has to be individualized. So we'll go into that. And then the final thing is just the function and purpose of well-developed progress monitoring data. This is the strength and the Achilles heel of every IEP. Wouldn't you agree, Laura?
I do, absolutely.
And progress monitoring is not just, this is my data, it's more than that. So those are the 2 series that will be rolled out. The other 2, the first 2, which is legally sound IEPs, roles and responsibilities will come first, but give us about 2 weeks for these the last 2.
We
and
do
then,
promise they will be amazing when they're done and very useful.
It's just, it's just birth the baby, get it over with.
Yeah. So go ahead, Susan.
Oh, well, so we're going to roll into progress monitoring. It's like COVID and beyond. It's where this is going, where this is taking us. So we had the opportunity to participate, review what happened in a presentation. So we talk a lot about CASE, which is the Council for Special Ed Administrators nationally through CEC. They offer some really, really good stuff. But they did a training with, and I'm going to give a shout out to one person on my dissertation committee, who's Mitch Yell at USC. He is a very knowledgeable man about special ed and legal precedent. So he talked with some other folks who I just won't name because I just pay attention to him, but that talked a lot about progress monitoring. And he pretty much is like, progress monitoring is the bread and butter of special ed. Mm-hmm. So some things that we took away from that we wanted to share. One, IEP teams make the decision of how that data is going to be collected and analyzed. It's connected to each goal and it's in your present levels of performance. Anecdotal data like that is not measurable and numerical is very subjective and it's very hard to measure and look at progress. If planned well, when you're doing all this progress monitoring, you're doing it throughout the year, you're collecting data, that should be the spearhead of the new IEP. So it shouldn't be burdensome, cumbersome. You shouldn't have to block off tons of time for it. It should already be planned out for you to do. So schools all over the country are already assessing all students for baselines because of loss of learning or regression due to the pandemic. We know that's happening. We talk about it. We learned, through our federal programs, folks, that the ESSER 3, the new funding that is coming out is 20% has to be allocated to loss of learning. So we know Gen Ed is doing that. But for special ed, getting that assessment and baseline data is actually what we already do, and it's through progress monitoring. So legitimate data is the key to making those decisions, and the data is either going to show regression or non-regression. Progress is the alternative. So if you have clear measurable data, that is your discussion of FAPE. That is your documentation of saying we provide a FAPE. If you have not been collecting measurable data, stop everything, focus on it. Well, don't stop teaching, but this has to be a priority and it has to start immediately. Laura, I think, always says, if we don't have the data to support it, it didn't happen. If we don't have our progress monitoring data, we don't have data to support progress has happened and FAPE has been provided. That's very scary language to me. Mm-hmm. So develop a system, make sure it's collected, organized, and if you can't put it in graphs, that visual representation is really critical for parents to understand what's going on. Make informed decisions. Schools universally are supposed to be having in South Carolina an MTSS system implemented and outlined. I know they've been having calls. Emily Baker is the MTSS person for our district. So progress monitoring is that structure on the Tier 3 special ed side. Progress monitoring is defined by, it's a measure of a child's educational health, which allows us to monitor and react quickly when there are challenges. Meaning, if the kid does not make trends of progress, the IEP team should reconvene and re-gauge what's going on. We have to have multiple data points, which we talked about, I think, last year or the year before, Laura. So if you have all these data points and one is low, but the trend is high, you look at the trends because students are human and they're going to go up and down a little bit within reason. But Andrew F., which we've talked about, indicates that schools must have a plan that does something to improve functional and academic progress. That's what MTSS is, and on the special ed side, that's what progress monitoring is. So if it's not happening, how are we meeting that mandate in Andrew on the special ed side? So some questions are right there. It's like, what do we do to make up for what's been lost? If something has been lost, but the data should show that. And if there was loss of instruction, how do we fix this? Some schools did very well and didn't miss a beat. Others, it was more challenging. So you got to look at it school-based and you got to look at it kid-based. So compensatory services could be an option. Laura talked about ESY could be an option, but they are very different things. Mm-hmm. So quickly we'll show you this graph that Case showed, or it's not a graph, it's a process chart that just talks about, was student progress monitored during COVID-19? It's a yes or a no. If it's yes, did the student make progress appropriate in light of his or her circumstances? It's a yes or a no, and see how it filters through. Talks about if you need to continue as normal, if you need to call a meeting and re-look at everything. Be proactive. Do not get this data, understand where kids are. Do not wait for a parent to raise this up, because then it's usually at the point of frustration. And I think there's one more slide. So legal expectations of progress monitoring. Collect real data, numbers, not words. Everything can be put in measurable capacity, right, Laura?
Yep.
Also, within that data, have objectives. Understand where you're wanting, where the kid's at, where you're wanting them to go. Teacher-made materials, and this, you know, I do have mixed reviews about this, but I also understand exactly where this is coming from. Teacher-made materials to help make decisions. Teacher-made materials are for guiding instruction. They're not for progress monitoring. Now, there are some social skills materials, some things that are teacher made, but if they're approved by the whole committee or the whole team, that's a different discussion. But there's some things that maybe this might venture into that I could always have an argument for it, but it still needs to be measurable.
Mm-hmm.
And then to collect meaningful data, it must be objective. So another point, bringing Andrew or legal precedent back to all of this, is no longer with Andrew does de minimis education matter. Okay, a child must make progress in light of their circumstances. How do we know what in light of their circumstance means? That's what progress monitoring does. The teams are designing this, and as a result, they know what progress in light of their circumstance should look like. It basically refers to the child's individual needs. Okay, a pandemic like what we've experienced or experiencing can play a role in that progress. Is it mandated? It does all the time? No, but that's what teams have to determine. Do we have questions regarding like progress monitoring, or this is heavy, you guys, but this is the thing I think Laura and I lose sleep over, or if we're looking at IEPs and problem solving cases, this is what it always comes back to.
Absolutely. And even it's always been progress monitoring, but even more so with COVID. And as parents start asking, I don't think, I know you all have said that you're seeing an additional, you know, kind of an influx right now. And I think that's probably going to continue into next year, especially as schools come back face to face. Hopefully in the fall, everybody will be back to face, you know, we'll be back face to face, and we'll have these kids in our buildings. And I think that's when we're going to see. The other thing you're dealing with is, you know, parents are home with their kids, and they're, you know, they're the learning coaches that Michelle Bishop deals with all the time, right? Our virtual worlds deal with all the time. So they're at home working with their kids and going, wait a minute, Johnny really doesn't know how to do this. What have these teachers been telling me? So that's where your data is extremely important.
And with students that are not typically virtual and are right now, another thing is understanding not just how they're doing, but how they're doing unassisted. So if you give a writing assignment, a gen ed teacher is giving a writing assignment, and you're using that writing assignment as part of your progress monitoring, but the child's doing it outside of any teacher look, the parent could be completely helping them.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be a gauge of, yes, we get support, and some things are not totally independent, but we need to know what that data is and how much independence is there. And there are some goals that it's with support, and then that's okay. But we need to understand it's not just a piece of data. The context of the data is really important. And map data is great, you guys, but that is not progress monitoring.
That's 3 times a year, and in some cases 2 times a year.
Or 3 times a year.
And a lot of the programs you are utilizing to instruct your students have progress monitoring built into them. We're not saying you have to reinvent the wheel and create all this stuff. In fact, we're telling you don't, because those teacher-made assessments aren't really what we're looking for. So within your programs, your research-based, evidence-based programs, there are progress monitoring things that are occurring naturally all the time. That's the data you should be looking at. Like Susan said, putting MAP on your goal as your progress monitoring is not enough, because you don't give that enough. and it's not going to give you the data you're looking for. So this is the end of our webinar, and I'll stop recording here in a minute, but we have to pick February's winner, right? Don't I have to pick a number or something, Susan?
Yes, Laura Simmons. Pick a number between 1 and 27.
27 people responded.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow. So I'm going to go with number 20.
Jean won. Jean Palmera.
You want to share what they've won?
Oh, sure. Oh, I feel like Vanna White. This is so exciting.
So this is the prizes we're giving out, everybody.
You have to do your monthly webinar. I got to open it, Laura. You
Okay.
have to do your monthly webinar survey. Are you going to take this over to her, Laura?
Yeah, I can. I got to come get mine anyway, so I'll swing by and get it, and I can bring it over to Greenville Tech.
This is going to be the prize. It says teamwork makes the dream work. And
Oh,
it's our wonderful mugs on a mug.
yay. Congratulations, Jean. So we'll do this again. We'll do another drawing next month for this webinar. So I am going to stop recording now.
Yeah, I think we said it would be February, March, April, and May will be
Yes.
drawings.
So my mouse is not working with me. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to stop recording, and we will post